that make up the tapestry of the fashion industry. With all that is weighing on our minds going forward, how do we collaborate and share ideas? And I think this is a great way to do that. With a virus that discourages the interaction of people, the touching of clothing, gathering, what is the future holding for the fashion industry, and how are our roles changing? What might that look like after a vaccine has been created? Today, it is my great pleasure to introduce all of you to Tara Ferri. Tara grew up in Schenectady, New York, and moved to Manhattan when she was 17, attending FIT. She graduated with 2 Associate of Fine Arts degrees, one in illustration and visual presentation, and another in exhibit design. She did return to complete a Bachelor of Fine Arts in art restoration. While at school, one of Tara's exhibit design professors was a stylist and hired Tara to assist her, and she took to it like a duck in water. In her last semester as a full-time student at FIT, the Jeffrey Bean exhibit at the FIT Museum needed installers, and they talked to her drafting professor, and Tara was suggested. That is not the norm at the FIT Museum, and they brought Tara on as one of the people setting it up. And not only was that successful, but she continued on for another 5 years freelancing for them, working in the shop, building platforms, painting walls, and hanging artwork. She also worked as an installer at the Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum. During that time, she also did other freelance gigs, including doing renderings for Macy's corporate store design, was a scenic artist for summer theater, and created window displays for local boutiques. After college, Tara joined a professional dressing team with Stephanie Jaworski of Stephanie J, which today is known as Fashion First. Fashion First is one of the top teams in the fashion world. They are known for their care and detail with collections, and Tara quickly became a top-tier dresser with them. Her work with Fashion First team also included steaming and pressing and going into designer studios as hired, as well as some assisting in production. Tara's knowledge from her time as a dresser in the production world is really very rare. The way that she can communicate with the dressers is very quick and succinct. Many pieces are difficult to deal with, and we have only X amount of time. We'll get into that a little bit more later, but an average fashion show is 12 minutes start to finish. Tara worked for 15 years as an assistant stylist, show producer, and assistant fashion editor on a menswear magazine, transitioning into a stylist in her own right, specializing in children's wear. She was made production lead for the Gotex fashion show when asked to join Judith Rice and Associates in 2011 as production lead for Tadashi Shoji. Tadashi, what can we say about Tadashi? We love Tadashi, and the amount of years that she has since worked with him, continues to work with him, is a very large testament to how well the team during collection care and production is run. So Tara, thank you so much for coming on and joining me, and welcome to my show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, big cup, hello. Oh, got it. No, I go through your background because it is so extensive. It is so varied and detailed. I just want to get people to have an understanding of where you're coming from, your level of expertise. And you and I spoke in April. We had cocktail hour on Zoom, and it was fabulous. I think that's when we were starting to realize this is going to be a little bit more than a couple of weeks. I know that your family is in upstate New York, and at the time, everybody's fine. Everything was great. But you are in Brooklyn, New York, at the epicenter of the coronavirus. How are you and your friends and your family doing today? How are you dealing with all of this?
Well, for my family, since they are upstate, they have not been hit the way we have, obviously. Albany which is the capital, only has about 1,600 cases, and my family is, which is right next to that, only have about 600. So they're getting ready to open. At this point, Brooklyn is one of the hardest hit spots, and we're at about 52,000. So, I mean, I'm doing well. Most of my friends are doing pretty well. I do know a bunch of people who have had the virus, who are recovering, and it's been a long recovery. It's not something you just get over like the flu. It is a couple of months, and it's just these lingering symptoms to it, like still being short of breath, or, any little thing that you do is still exhausting a couple of months into it. I have a friend who's still testing positive a month and a half after he tested. So it's not something that you can easily get over. We don't know what happens after this. There are other side effects, including kidney disease. People are having strokes. I have a friend who is a nurse for Sloan Kettering, and they're asking for dialysis machines more than respirators at this point. So we're at that point. But
I don't feel like we've really heard about that, Tara, the dialysis machines.
Yeah. So there, going forward, we don't know what all the other side effects are going to be. Like, what does this do to you in the long term? Are you going to have these lingering problems with heart and kidney and all of that? So nobody really knows.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that you have switched into, you worked yoga as well as in fashion shoots, which that lasted a little bit longer. I think you guys were wiping everything down at the time.
Yes, in my other world, I do teach yoga, mostly pre and postnatal. So I'm in a very special environment. We started really, the studios were kicking that in probably by the end of February, really with the disinfectant and wiping down all of our props. We stopped doing hands-on adjustments with our students a couple of weeks before the studios closed, and just distancing ourselves from our students and then wiping down props. And then it was, okay, now we can't use props. If you want to use props, bring your own. And then the studios closed. It was a very sudden thing because it was when the state closed down, and they closed down all of the gyms, yoga studios, restaurants, everything. And that was March 23rd, I believe. But it was very sudden. At that point, we were just trying to figure out how we were going to make this work and how much longer it was going to happen. And at that point, they also were only closing for a couple of weeks, somehow thinking that this was going to blow over or get better, which obviously did not.
Right. And we usually see each other at this point. I'm really missing you. We usually see each other for bridal, for Pratt graduation fashion shows. I mean, it was sudden. I think we did think that maybe it was going to be a couple weeks and then come back. And here we are. This is going to be a long haul. And right now, the way I see it, New York Fashion Week is up in the air. We're just not sure what's going to happen. Yeah. But I mean, I have taken your yoga classes, and it has, just so you know, it helps me through. There is something about it being live that just adds such a touch that's so important during this time for me. And for anybody watching, I'm going to give information on your yoga classes at the end. But how amazing is that to switch to yoga online? You're so creative, but that's how we always have to be as freelancers. We've got to be adaptable and quick thinking and change on a dime. It's just been a roller coaster for all of us. It's going to open. It's not going to open. It's going to happen. It's okay. It's not okay. Like I said, I briefly went through your backgrounds and your description of everything that you've done. You've gone from dresser, art, exhibits, production. I like to call you like back of house savior. People follow you around asking questions during at the beginning of fashion shows, and I try to save you sometimes, and sometimes I just say, well, she's just got to deal with that. But from dresser to production team, you started 7th on 6th, which later became Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week. Then we moved to Lincoln Center. Then we went to the post office, and yeah, and more recently we've been at Spring Studios. You've seen so many changes in venues over the years. Has the collection management process changed, or has that pretty much stayed the same?
It hasn't changed a whole lot, and some of that depends on the specific designer and budget. So a lot of our production depends on budget. I've done very high-end and very low-end jobs with, you know, you could have a team of 15 people or a team of 2 doing the work of 15 people, but you know. So I think most of it is the technology. So, you know, having now in this day and age, you have a million people backstage. They're all photographing. It's all going on social media right away. So what happens backstage is just seen instantly. It used to be that everything that we did in production for backstage was for us. You know, we were doing the dresser notes. So for everybody who doesn't know, the dressers, all the models have dressers, and each outfit will have a card that says their name, the number that the outfit is, what pieces are in the outfit, any styling notes, shoes, etc., etc. And all of that is for the people backstage. We have a run of show board with all of the pictures of all of the outfits, and that's a reference board for us. There's one for hair, there's one for makeup, it's for their teams. But now everything is photographed constantly, so they have to look perfect. And back in the day, we didn't, you know, we were doing everything on Polaroid film. You know, they're not the best pictures. It was an instant reference for us. You know, handwritten notes and everything. And now, because it's going to be photographed, they have to be flawless backstage. You know, we put so much work into how that looks so that it is seen. You know, just, I started doing this in the mid-90s. So, you know, we weren't working on our computers at work. We were doing everything by phone calls, and it was just a lot more, I feel like a lot more legwork. Whatever you needed, you had to run out and find. Now it's like we can just order it online. So things like that have changed around a lot more than anything. Then there's the backstage, just, now you can't smoke backstage. You know, that started around 2001, 2002, something like that, when they did the smoking ban. Back in the 90s, there were cigarettes everywhere. People were eating near the food. They were drunk. We had models that would be so drunk they could barely walk. They would be hanging off the rack, literally just hanging on for dear life while 3 people changed them. And this stuff doesn't happen anymore. People are a little more well-behaved these days.
Yeah, you don't see as much, but we still have a lot of action in the sense that, and I mentioned it at the beginning, that these shows are start to finish 12 minutes.
Right.
And we have to dress quickly. And decisions have to be made on the fly. And I know you have made quite a few interesting decisions.
Oh yeah. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. There's always going to be something happening, a zipper that's going to break, or, you know, we've had to cut somebody out of a boot because the zipper broke, zipped up. So there's no way to get this boot off this girl, and she's got to get a pair of pants off. So cutting through it. I cut through a sweater, a cashmere sweater before. Girl had a giant bouffant. This was not thought about before the show. I wasn't a stylist. This is back in my dresser days. Cashmere turtleneck. No zipper on the back. That we had to, 3 people had to shimmy her into it. She actually had to step into it, and we had to have her arms down, and we shimmied it up onto her before the show.
She stepped into the turtleneck. That is a tiny
turtleneck. Yeah, cashmere turtleneck. Luckily, I had enough stretch that we could just shimmy it on her. It took us about 10 minutes, but, you know, getting it on before the show's fine. Getting it off in the middle of the show is not going to happen, and that just slices down the back. Just took the scissors. It was the only way to get this thing off of her and get her into another outfit in, what, 60 seconds or so that you have to change her.
It's fast. I'm not sure that some of the people that come to the shows and whatnot, that they realize how quick it is, and that the dressers, how many people it takes, it's a very quick turnaround. We definitely have designers that come that think they can change within what we call 3 looks. And anybody that's at a show knows we have at least 2 looks, 2 outfits, 2 models on the runway passing each other. So that would mean if there were 3 looks in between and you're the girl coming back, that the second girl in line is you that just came on. That is not going to happen. I love when you're explaining that to the different designers.
But the new designers that come in and they, you know, they've never done a show and they're like, they've got it all set and you're like, this model's never getting on the runway, guarantee it, you know, and they're gonna argue with you. And you're like, well, you know, you can try it, but it's not gonna happen.
And you've worked with some big personalities, and someone who I believe is a mentor to me that I've always looked up to, Joan Rivers. You worked with her.
Yeah.
What can you tell me a little bit about that work? I mean, I'm in absolute awe.
This is way back. We worked on a bunch of Regis and Kathy Lee shows, and then Regis and Kelly, and I worked with her in both capacities. One was a Halloween show. We had to dress her as Uncle Sam. Actually, I worked with Peter Boyle on that same show, dressing him as a cop. And but another time we did 4 days of makeovers with her, and it was out on the street. They were tourist makeovers. So we would go out and she would, you know, I'd be kind of step back and they'd go around with the camera and she'd talk to people and she'd pick out somebody and decide that they needed a makeover. And then I would take them off to Lord & Taylor. We'd pick out an outfit. I'd bring them to get their hair done. And then the next morning they would go on the show, do the makeover, and then we'd go out again to another place. We did like Empire State Building, the Met Museum, Times Square. So 4 days of Joan. Yeah, she was amazing.
Yeah, she really was she always knew what was coming. She always had her finger on the pulse, really. Well, I know that we're coming towards the end, and I love to talk about these. We could talk for hours. You and I know that, and we do. But I do want to get to my last question that I have, which is with so many people discussing virtual fashion show versus live and in person. What do you see for the future of fashion shows after a vaccine is created? Are we just going to go back to the same old, same old?
That's really a tough question. I don't imagine it's ever going to be the same. Even after this all happens, do we get used to this system of doing a virtual show? Do these continue? After there is a vaccine, how effective is it? How safe do people still feel? There's going to be a lot of layover from this where are we still going to use masks? Are we still going to use gloves, even in our regular life of working with a bunch of people? Because, you know, when you're prepping for a show, you have so many bodies coming through. You have castings, all these models coming through just for a casting day. There could be 100 of them. That's a lot of people to be in contact with every day. So do we just continue on with this system? You know, I have a feeling that even if we do virtual shows, some of those might continue. And if we go back to doing live shows, there's definitely gonna be a difference to them.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I think you had mentioned one time when we were talking that your grandmother lived through the Depression and she continues to save wrapping paper, and that we are going to continue to be afraid of maybe groups of people.
Yeah, I imagine that there's going to be.
Yeah, and the hand washing and the concern and the models, I just think gone are the days that we have 20 models in the seats. Mm-hmm. All getting their hair and makeup done at the same time with all of the hair and makeup artists. We could barely get through backstage, as you know, just to grab a model, to fix shoes. I don't think we're going to see that again.
No, I don't think we can.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it changes. But everybody's pretty much on hold right now. I did get a question, which I think you're gonna love this. With all of the high tensions in at Fashion Week during the shows, there's a lot of money and there's a lot of people. Oh yeah, there are. Did you start yoga because of the intense stress from this type of pressure? And do many people in the industry turn to yoga to manage their stress?
I did not turn to yoga because of fashion. The first yoga class I took was in 1988. So it was my gym class. So I started doing yoga before I ever got into fashion. And it was just, and then totally off subject, I was diagnosed as a teenager with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. So I always had joint problems. So it was a nice way to have movement without inflammation.
And Hayden, you said another question just came in?
Yeah, we have one question.
Yep.
Are there positive changes that you see with the changes from in-person versus virtual fashion shows? And how will it change the way designer lines will be accessible to the public?
Oh, wow. Can you say that one more time? Yeah. I'm sorry. Were you able to hear that at all?
No, I can't hear it. It's kind of breaking up too.
Start with the first sentence and I'll repeat.
Are there positive changes that you see with the changes from in-person versus virtual?
Okay. Do you see positive changes with in-person, with virtual versus in-person? And
how will it change the way designer lines will be accessible to the public?
How will it change how designer lines are accessible to the public?
Oh, let's see. Okay, let me go back to that. What do I find that's positive in, say that again?
In virtual versus in person? Do you see some positive changes coming from that?
I mean, I see that being more accessible to everybody right now, although a lot of the shows have been broadcast online where that wasn't the case before and it was very exclusive. So maybe it will just reach more people, and because there won't be anything in person, it will all be online. For anybody who is in the industry, it's a lot easier because you're not going from show to show. So I think that will be really good for anybody who's a fashion editor, stylist, and all of that. You can sit at home and watch all of these shows. I mean, the disadvantage is not being able to see clothing in person, which is very different. Being able to feel fabrics and just see the weight of them and how they're actually laying. So that's a big change. Okay, second part of that?
The second part was
how will it change designer lines and the accessibility?
How will it change designer lines and the accessibility to the public? Wait,
the way designer lines are accessible.
And the way designer lines are accessible to the public. So how will it change the designer lines and the way it's accessible to the public?
That, I don't even know how to answer that, since I'm not a designer. I'm just on the fashion show production end of this. Maybe you have a better.
Well, my feeling, my thoughts went to you working at Gilt. And so is this a way that people will be shopping now? Is this a way that it's accessible for people? I think that's going to be a question moving forward.
Yeah, that's a really hard question to answer. I mean, there will obviously be a lot more online shopping. Even the stores that are staying open, I see stores closing at this point, where we will have to do more online shopping. And then how many people do want to actually go into a store at this moment? So
right.
As far as accessible, I feel like everybody has online shopping anyway. Everything's accessible online, so I don't see that being a big change.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's simply staying in that format. You said we had one more question? I'm sorry. We're going to try to fit in one more question.
Do you think that in addition to safety issues, shows will move in a new direction to adapt to smaller budgets given the decline in retail?
Do you think,
in addition
to safety issues, shows will move in a new direction to adapt to smaller budgets given the decline in retail sales?
Yes, I think they're going to have to. Yeah. I was thinking about this as soon as bridal got canceled back at the end of March. We were supposed to do bridal shows and that was all being canceled. And then, well, since all of this is happening right now, people are not going to have the money next season, even if we do have Fashion Week, which I seriously doubt anything is going back to normal for another year and a half. They're not going to have the budgets. They won't have the money. Then we do smaller shows, or they do something a little more informal, or they do, you know, people that stand on platforms instead of runway shows, things like that.
Yeah, presentation. We're going to have to definitely get more creative and continue to try to find solutions so that it's safe but still moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tara, thank you so much for everything, for coming on and handling our questions. And I love hearing your stories. You'll have to come back on again and talk to us more all about it.
We'll just have a show just about our backstage stories.
Oh gosh, backstage stories. That could be on TV. All right. I love you. Love to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And everyone, thank you for attending the second episode in my Behind Fashion series. Tara Ferri's website is taraferriyoga.com. Next week, I'll be joined by Kathy Young. She's an actress, a stylist, producer, production lead, and a maven behind the scenes. So you're not going to want to miss this episode as we dive into what's going on behind fashion. See you all next week, Wednesday, May 27th at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, noon on the East Coast, and 9 a.m. in California. This conversation has been recorded, and a link will be sent to you in a few days. All the best to you and yours.